This is the Land Rover Discovery. It's in its 5th generation and it's just gone through a bit of an update. I actually learned how to drive on a Land Rover Discovery 3, so I kindly asked Land Rover if they'd lend us one. They said yes, because I wanted to see what had changed. And with all these new models coming out from Land Rover, like the Defender and the updated Discovery Sport, I was curious as to where this sat in the product lineup. But it is very clear to me initially that this is the luxury 7-seat off-roader that it was always destined to be. It's evolved from a brutish off-roader with a bit of luxury now into something that is a lot more road focused, but as you can see, it's still got the chops to go off-road. Now I'm gonna walk you around the outside, the inside, and of course take it for a drive both off-road and on-road to let you know if this is worth buying in 2021 going into 2022. Now with that out of the way, my name's Cameron, this is Product Review Cars. This is our last review for 2021. Let's get into it. Now, the design of the Discovery has smoothed out quite a lot from the Discovery 3 and Discovery 4. Those boxy looks have now been smoothed out into something that's very Range Rover-esque, and that's something I guess a lot of customers from the Discovery family were going, look, that's what we use it for, it's a family car, so something that's got a bit of a modern look to it might be a bit more approachable than something that's a bit more brutish like the new Defender. So if you want those brutish, boxy looks from Land Rover, you will have to go to the Defender because it's a lot more smooth and subtle here than it was compared to the last generations. Like the bonnet bulge here is a lot more smoothed out. There's also these very nice looking LED daytime running lamps and headlamps as well, very powerful, which are great. We also have some headlamp washers as well, which is good for, you know, getting gunk up here. You can spray that off. And you've also got very reminiscent Range Rover type textures on the grille and Discovery spelt across the front, which is iconic as anything because they've been doing that since almost day one. Now along the side, the sort of smooth and sculpted looks follow on from the front. There's some black contrasting with this white paint. I'm just gonna say it, I don't think I'd get this car in white. I'd get it in like a dusty color or maybe even just straight up black. I like white, but not my first pick personally. You don't have these big grills on the side anymore. Instead it says Discovery along here, nice and neatly. And you've also got these deep grooves along the side, very reminiscent of those Range Rover influences, especially this one I find going along here. Now the 20-inch wheels are standard for the S, and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of having larger wheels for an entry-level model, especially for something that's meant to be off-road focused, but these seem to have fared pretty well going off-road, and these tires, these Pirelli Scorpion tires, have done a good job of, you know, keeping the grip when going on a bit of a slippery surface. So maybe I'll take those remarks back, but these do look very good for a car of this size. Love the blade along here as well. It's a good design influence. And then around the back, I love the conscious effort from Land Rover to have everything tucked up underneath. So there's no gaudy tailpipes or anything like that, or even a go at putting fake tailpipes. It is very genuine back here. Love Discovery spelled across the back. Love the little, you know, boot spoiler we have going on here, helping with aero, which is quite nice to see. And, you know, again, ties in with the aerodynamic and modern shape of this car. But what I will say is that this little piece here, which is one of those most controversial things that have been discussed on the internet, the offset license plate, perhaps not my favorite design cue, only because I liked it on the previous gen when the window followed that design, so it made sense for the offset license plate. But because the window is now uniform in shape, this sort of does look a little bit out of place. Now you can go and buy a new tailgate from third-party manufacturers if you're really not liking this, but like everything else about this car, it doesn't bother me that much, but it is something to say that I do miss that sort of weirdly shaped rear window at the back. Now look, this is one of those cars that makes me at 5'11" look a lot shorter than that. So I know I'm not that tall, but yeah, this is pretty ridiculous on how tall this car can get. Now, the boot space is very decent on this car, and that is part of the reason that you're going to buy this. My parents bought their Discovery 3 because we'd moved from overseas and they wanted a car that was going to haul absolutely everything from a bigger house into a smaller house, and the Discovery did just that with flying colors. So it is one of those cars that is very, very suitable for the daily grind and also putting a ton of stuff in here, plus carrying 5 people very comfortably. Now this boot space here is very high up, so you know, you ask yourself, how on earth would I lift anything too heavy from down here up to here without doing any sort of previous deadlifting experience? Well, let me show you. You actually have buttons in the back to lower the air suspension down which is just very cool. And it allows you to bring the car down to a suitable height. It does take a little while to get there, but you can keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And when you start the car, it will go back up to its normal height, so you don't have to worry about that. And a little bit like you just come out of Compton, the back of the car is down like this and the front of the car is up. So it allows you to get a nice lower load floor. And especially if you're, struggling to reach this button, which is quite high up, at least when you bring that down, you can reach up here. There's also 2 floodlights back here, which I kind of like. Well, floodlights, the very bright lights in the boot back here. And then, I love all the carpeting back here. You can probably get yourself a rubber mat if you're worried about things getting to the carpet, but our carpet fared pretty well without having to need a rubber mat over 10 years of ownership, so that's not so bad. Some little hooks in the back for your shopping, which are quite nice, and some little storage cubbies up on the top here with little USB ports in them, which is great for either the passengers sitting in the back or, just for using it in the boot. There's also a 12-volt adapter here, and there are controls to fold down the seats respectively. So they're electronically folding seats, which is just awesome. They fold in a 60-40 split fashion, but you can fold them in a 40-20-40 split with folding that middle seat down, so you don't have to compromise any sort of comfort for the passengers in the second row. And of course, this car has been fitted with a towing kit, so it just means that you can throw on anything and just get going, rather than having a panel that would sort of tidy up this rear end. Now, the new Land Rover Discovery interior is a prime example of how Land Rover and Jaguar are streamlining their interior designs and features to make them feel, yes, upmarket with a few select unique options, but really they all look the same now. So the new Range Rover, the Jaguar F-Pace, the new Defender, everything is getting a similar type display with the same type of screen, same type of shifter, minimal amounts of buttons, capacitive touch on the, climate controls, the same type of steering wheel, the same infotainment. And look, I'm not complaining. I think that is a brilliant business decision, and they've done it in such a way that it's not a cheap out by any means. It just means that when you jump into a new Range Rover or a new Land Rover or something like that, it's gonna be very familiar jumping in. And these materials in here are very upmarket, even for the base model that we've got here. Soft touch rubber up on the dash, very soft touch materials up on the door panels, some nice stitching on the dashboard. And even if there are plastics used, they're a nice rubber coated one, or there's a nice coating to them so they don't ever feel too harsh. And then, the shifter feels nice and like an Alcantara type material. The rubber grips around the terrain response button feels nice and rugged, as well as around the climate controls. And, everything closed with a nice sound, It's a very good and very well built interior in that way. Now, the screen is a classic example of Land Rover's new infotainment screen, and it's a really well executed one. Sure, the frame rate could be upped just a tiny bit, but that would be my only improvement. I think the interface is really easy to use. The app layout is, very easy to access. Anyone who spends 2 minutes with this will quickly become accustomed to where everything is. I like the settings button to quickly change audio settings or anything like that, rather than having to dig deep into any sort of settings sub menu. So that's brilliant there. The climate controls are good. These are very similar layouts to the Jaguar F-Pace that I reviewed earlier this year. And what I do like is that there's a button below the screen to fold down those climate controls for a hidden little cubby, which is nicely appointed with some sort of felt material. So that's quite fun there. Below that, there's some rubber grips so you can put your stuff like your phone or any sort of keys underneath the screen here, with a USB Type-C port out the front and the wireless phone charger to the right of that. Now, there are some cup holders below this roller cover, and below the cup holders is a giant storage bin, which I guarantee you plenty of people will be forgetting things that they put in there, but at least that is down below that as some additional storage. Now, the speaker system in here, even though it's the base system, it still does a good job of delivering plenty of power and clarity, especially with the little tweeters up near the wing mirrors up here. So that is quite good even for the base system. And look, the metal trim throughout here is nice as well. I like how they didn't put the metal trim along the sides, because that's where we had issues. We had key rings smashing into that metal trim, and it gets, it got all pitted when we threw keys into the middle because the keys banged that. So luckily the metal trim is just kept to the front of the dashboard. Now, this giant center console here is really good, not just for storage with a little, there's a shallow little storage compartment here, but below that there is a huge amount of storage. So much so I could put my big water bottle way down in there and forget about it. So that is really cool, and I love how versatile this car is with its storage. Now there are 2 additional USBs here, USB-C and a USB Type A. So I think Land Rover have heard complaints about some of the cars lacking USB ports, so they've just gone overboard here, and that is a very welcome change. So we have 3 USBs just up front. Now these seats here are like a vegan leather and a cloth material. Initially I was a bit like, is that something that I like? Do I miss the leather? But no, I do not at all. These are really good for those hot summer days, and I actually really like the material texture along with all these other soft touch materials. These do feel very upmarket, do a great job of holding you in, and of course are electronically adjustable. Now the biggest thing that I missed about our old Discovery when it had to be moved on was the rear seat space. Now this is an interesting package in here because when you're sitting up front, you look down and these seats look really low to the floor, and they sort of are, but there is plenty of comfort to be had here. There's now individual sculpting for the rear seats, which means that the middle seat is just going to be as comfortable as the outer rows, which is good. And there's a very flat load floor across the back here. Even though there is a slight little bump, it's just like the old generations where you're never going to have an issue putting 3 adults in the back. Sitting here, I have plenty of knee room, I have plenty of headroom, although my knees are a little bit separated from the bottom of these seats. I'm not really going to be complaining about seat room back here because I have plenty of places to hang out back here. There's also a little blind spot alert, so if you go to open your doors, and that will light up if there is an obstacle in the way, so it's good for kids or anyone who doesn't have a mirror to look back or doesn't look out the back of the door, so that's a good little feature there. Love the grab handle here, and the one up here as well just means that you've got an additional way to get in and out of the car and also hold on to when things get a little rough. Now talking about USB and charging points, there's 2 USB Type-C ports here, there's another USB-A, and there's a 12-volt socket in the back, so plenty of places to charge. I love these mat pockets as well. I love how they're sort of like a hard shell, so it means that they're never going to have like a saggy net situation or any sort of leather that could rip, so that's nice and good there. Now look, for a car that's this big, it really isn't as easy as say like a Kia Sorento to get into the back. You can do a one-touch operation with these electronically folding seats. Slide them forwards, and that's the amount of room that you're going to get in, and it's just not exactly the, the roomiest car to step into. So getting up in here and sitting back and then sealing myself in here. Let's use this side. There we go. Yeah, look, you're gonna have to ask nice for the front passenger to, sit up a bit more, because it's not gonna provide much knee room if you're an adult. So I'm 5'11", and look, it's gonna mean that I'm gonna have pretty constricted knee room with this seat being all the way reclined, but sitting a bit more upright, I've actually got usable knee room, and there is some considerable cutouts for my boots to go under there as well. My headroom is a little bit more limited than it is in the second row, but to be honest, comfort, they did a really good job of making sure these seats are nice and comfortable. And I have plenty of views out of this little window on the side and a nice amount of light coming in from this sunroof. So that's something that Land Rover was conscious of, is that they didn't want to make the rear passengers feel claustrophobic by only having 2 sunroofs. So that is nice to see that there's still plenty of light in the back here. So I would still be relatively comfortable if I really had to sit back here. So I thought I'd start the driving section of this review going off-road, because this is what Land Rover is all about, and it's part of the selling point of grabbing yourself a Discovery over something like an X5 or even a Porsche Cayenne, is that you can just turn off the beaten path and head straight off-road. Now, immediately I head off onto this fire trail, and I really don't feel like I have to do anything because this car feels nice and capable and softly sprung with its air suspension in normal mode. But obviously we're going to be heading a bit off-road, so I will have to adjust here rather than wanting to do it further down the track. So pulling off to the side here, let's get ourselves a little bit higher up. So this car has 2 off-road settings for its air suspension, and it's all accessed through the screen now. So for some people, they might not like the fact that it is in the screen, which I sort of agree with. I sort of like the little, little nodules that were down here, but your terrain modes are still in a physical form, as well as your hill descent control and low range mode. But it just means that if you want to adjust your off-road height, you do have to jump into the screen. Now, with everything adjusted, we have a few new dimensions here. So we have a 34-degree approach angle, we have a 27.5-degree breakover angle, and then we have a 30-degree departure angle. And that is all right. We have a ground clearance of around 0.28 meters, which is very decent. And look, that means we have plenty of ground clearance. So it is pretty fun to drive this car around town in this height, but it just gives you a lot more confidence going off-road when you're finally up in off-road mode. Oh, what's really good is that you have 650 newton meters on tap. And yeah, sure, it could be labeled as excess, but to me, that's luxury. And that's part of the selling point for this car, is that it is a luxury off-roader, and it just does these sections with ease. It is one of those cars that a lot of people modify and head off-road, and the Discovery 5 has been a very popular option. This is called the Discovery, but it is in its 5th generation, with this being the facelift version of the 5th generation. And plenty of people use this for going, on adventures off-road and stuff like that. And, we've had family friends who've taken theirs way out into the outback, the only issue being a flat tire. So just as long as you bring maybe an extra spare on top of the one that comes with this car, you'll be set. Now, here we are. We're on our off-road proving ground, and we obviously start here with the hill descent control test. So I'm going to turn that on, and we're just going to start rolling forwards. This is what Land Rover is all about. It's about just being able to jump onto an off-road circuit and go ahead and tackle it. So the car's doing a good job, even just in normal mode, of just tackling this section here. There's lots of loose rocks, lots of loose sand, and that did a very good job of tackling that. There was no weird sounds. Those cheaper hill descent control systems make a lot of weird sounds, where that just does it really easily. So look, that is a comfortable experience using hill descent control. Now I'm going to switch this car into grass, gravel and snow, because that's what we're on here. Now that just tells the car to prepare for this type of surface, and it prepares the diffs as well, which are actively unlocking and locking, which is kind of cool, and the car will show you that in a screen up on the dash or here in the infotainment system. And look, this is why I love Land Rovers, is because I don't feel like I have to sacrifice anything to be able to do this trail that plenty of other off-roaders can do, but this just does it in such a classy way, which is part of the reason why you pay so much money for them. Now what's cool is that we can jump into the camera system here, and we can check underneath the bonnet, which I think is really cool. So it's the off-road camera system, and these cameras are really high def. And I'm not just saying that because I think they look, I just know they are. These things are crispy as anything, and you can go into a transparent bonnet mode and see what's happening underneath you, which is a really cool party trick. And look, going through ruts and stuff like that, body flex is really minimal. This is a taut car, and it's just, I love luxury off-roaders that just, overlanding is becoming very popular with the whole pandemic situation. So if you need a vehicle to take you places, to work and also off-road, a Land Rover goes a long way of being a very capable option. So in true Discovery fashion, this is very much like the touring off-road model of Land Rover's lineup. I've tested the Defender earlier this year, and I really love that, and it's really friendly on the road compared to the previous generations. But the new Discovery is just so clearly made for the road and also has off-road capabilities. This one here is the D300. So we're packing 220 kilowatts and 650 newton meters of torque from a twin turbocharged diesel inline six with a mild hybrid system. A lot of words there, but basically what we're doing is we're going back to basics in the British lineup with an inline six. It's twin turbocharged, so that's exciting, and it's diesel, so it is very appropriate for off-roading use and long hauling purposes as well. And that mild hybrid system really is the cherry on top, because I really think Land Rover's mild hybrid engines do a nice job of ironing out all the kinks and bumps in the turbo diesel engine characteristics. So you get a good amount of instant off the line acceleration acceleration, so this can hit 0 to 100 in 6.8 seconds. Now, what is really impressive is that we used to have a Land Rover Discovery 3, and that was a very brutish thing. It had, you know, a bunch of torque, it was heavy, it was very slow compared to, you know, what this is today. And that's why driving this, I'm very impressed with how it's come together. So the inline six with a 0 to 100 times 6.8 seconds is a lot of fun, and it never really has a moment of hesitancy. You can go around mid-range pull just fine. So through these corners up here, the only thing that starts letting you down is the tires, because these tires sort of start to succumb to the actual weight of this car when you really start to push it. But aside from that, who knew you get a lot of fun in the driving department on the road for the Land Rover Discovery. It's a lot of fun to drive on the road, which is a good thing. And this is, really don't know if I caught that, but yeah, that's what happens if you don't have a car that's built for cornering like this. This does have some paddle shifters as well to the 8-speed automatic gearbox. Look, the 8-speed automatic gearbox is okay. I have had some issues with it where it sort of clunked here and there, which sort of was a little bit concerning initially, but obviously it sorted itself out quite quickly, but it wasn't smooth all the time. And there's another good thing that this car has, is that it will detect speed cameras that are fixed in place, which is quite good, and it gives you a bit of a heads up if you're not using something like Waze. And another good safety thing as well is the blind spot monitoring. It is just good because a car like this is going to have a fair amount of blind spots if you don't do your mirrors right, so it's nice to know that the entire side of your car is being looked out for using some little orange lights in the mirrors. And then additionally, the camera system along with the rear cross traffic alert system is just, you know, 3 really good things that help you keep safe on the road and avoid getting speeding tickets with that, you know, monitoring for any speed cameras. Changing gears with these paddles, it's pretty fun. Like, it is fun to change with these paddles. This gearbox does respond really well to gear shifts via these paddle shifters, which is a big surprise for me again. This car has become a lot more road focused than the previous generations, and that's why the Discovery 4 is still very popular, because it's sort of the last sort of off-road shaped one where this sort of got a bit more Range Rover influence from what I can tell from all the amenities and also the styling and, you know, the way this thing drives. To be honest, this is impressive. I think for what people are going to want, this is going to suit the bill a lot better for on-road use most of the time. And then when you want to go off-road, it's nice to know that this still is very capable of going off-road, but it's not as daunting to drive as the Defender 110 in terms of its humongous size. So this also gets a 7-seat option as well, but you don't have to get something as big as the incoming Defender 130 to get that 7-seat option. Now, fuel consumption is a little bit thirsty here. I'm looking around an average of 11 to 12 liters per 100 Ks. And look, that's just something that's going to come along with a big car like this and a more power-oriented diesel motor like this one that is fitted to this car. And that's something we did experience in the Discovery 3, but it has come down a little bit with the mild hybrid system, and the larger fuel tank will mean that you're not really going to be stressing about running out of fuel. But that is just something to note, it is a little bit of a thirsty SUV. Now, should you buy a Land Rover Discovery? Well, I think this is at the top of its game more than any time in its history. And it's because of this new motor, the capability now with its more refined air suspension system. It's also got a new interior, which is far more user-friendly, and it's got plenty of space on the inside. And I think the dimensions make it a lot more family-friendly, so anyone in the family will be happy to take the keys and go and park this without feeling it being a daunting task like it might be on the larger Defender. I think against the likes of the Audi Q7 and the BMW X5 or even the X7, this is still a stronger case if you want to go on roads like this. I can't really picture myself going out here in a Q7. Audi haven't really lent into that being an off-road focused vehicle, where Land Rover have kept true to their absolute core, you know, values of the brand and making sure that you feel comfortable taking this off-road and it feels, more importantly, capable, which this is. So I think the added on-road comfort as well makes this a great option for going on long trips. It's a great ski trip vehicle. It's great for going camping. If you're thinking about going further away because you think international travel is something you don't really want to do for the next couple of months or maybe say year, this is a great option to take you places you probably won't have explored in a more road-focused SUV. I really like the new Discovery, and it's just, you know, everything about it is just as good as I remember it as the previous Discovery 3 that we used to own. I'm just hoping long-term reliability with the added 5-year warranty for this car holds true, and this hopefully is a more reliable vehicle than our Discovery 3 was. Now, I also want to say a massive thank you to everyone who subscribed, followed, liked, or done anything to interact with this channel, because it has been an absolute journey for this year as our first year of reviewing cars here at Product Review Cars. Now, I'm only more excited to see what 2022 holds in store, but if it's anything to go by what 2021 was, I think you're going to be in for an absolute treat. So if you want to round off the year to an absolute plus, make sure you hit subscribe, give us a follow here and on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next one.